away we go. All right, so first things first, let me share my screen. We can talk about the, I want to just go through the midterm. No. Then we're going to talk about Art Nouveau, a whole bunch, plus a little bit of the iron technology and steel technology. All right. All right. This one was not difficult. That's a Corinthian capital. How do you know? Acanthus leaf, the big scrolls. Usually at this point, you get to where you can look at them and you can see which one is which. Corinthian and the Ionic are the most recognizable. All right, this sculpture is Greek. This is a Greek sculpture that is heavily influenced by the Egyptians and is part of their process along the way to that heightened realism they achieved. All right, the raised section of roof, clerestory. Animal legs are a design feature of Egyptian furniture. Yes, that is true. Identify the term used to describe stone surface that is left unfinished or chiseled to create a worn age appearance. Rustication. Several of you answered rustification, and I don't know where you heard that, but that's not right. It's rustication. And I will say that variation on rustication is something that has happens semester after semester. Let me double check to make sure my, yeah, Holly, my volume is on, so I'm not sure. Can you guys hear me?
Now I hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. No, you should clear. It's good to clear it up. All right. So it's rustication. Furniture piece called a step buffet was used as a symbol of status. Yes, that is true. And these winged babies, Amorini. This is an answer for a different version of the question. These little guys up here, Amorini is the main term I would use. Some people know them as cherubs, putti. Those work too. All right, this chair. Something significant about the chair's design, and the chair is called a sedia Savonarola or Sella-Carillus. So the chair is known as Savonarola. I did look up, a couple of you answered that it is a sedia, which is an Italian Renaissance armchair. And sometimes this chair, this style of chair could be called sedia, so I allowed it. It's not Sella-Carillus though. Sella-Carillus goes back to the Romans. This is Renaissance. And the significance of the chair's design, that crossed frame, you could say that because it's a folding stool, it's portable. That's like a design aspect that's important. You could say it has a relationship with the Sella-Carillus. Those are possible answers. This is Intarsia. I also accepted marquetry or trompe-l'oeil because marquetry is the French term for what is basically the same thing as Intarsia. And trompe-l'oeil is this visual effect of creating that illusion of real depth and form on a flat surface. That is a cassone. Two elements that are Roman in this Renaissance church facade. The semicircular or rounded arch, triangular. that triangular pediment makes this look like a temple. The pilasters, which are those look like columns, but they're embedded in the walls. And what really makes them Roman, they're on pedestals, or appear to be on pedestals, and they have what looks like a Corinthian capital. Oh yeah, so describe trompe l'oeil. So the thing that you need for the definition of this term is that it is illusionistic, that it creates a visual deception of some sort. Just saying that it's realistic doesn't quite go far enough to describe this term. And according to Furniture, A Concise History, the printing press accelerated the spread of information throughout Europe. Is this correct? Yes, it is. It sure did. All right, identify one difference between Renaissance and Baroque. This was a more challenging one. So Renaissance, going back to like the 1400s, 1500s, that was like this rediscovery and rediscovery of like how to build the way the Romans built. And so it's a lot more true or faithful to Roman design. There was some invention, like they expanded upon building types, but a lot of it was more like a faithful copy or an attempt to be faithful to the Romans. The Italian Baroque, so I asked for this in Italy. The Italian Baroque is more inventive with Roman design. It was used to promote the Roman Catholic Church over the Protestants. So it was used as a, I guess, almost as a weapon in the Counter-Reformation. And okay, according to Furniture Concise History, at the beginning of the Renaissance, bedding and woven art continues to be considered more valuable than wooden furniture, and that is correct. Portability for a long time is one of the most is an important feature of valuables. All right, so here's this one. 2 specifically Renaissance features. Ha 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 ha. An arcade and an altar placed at the end of the nave are not specifically Renaissance features because those appear in Gothic churches. The Roman-style rounded arches and the Corinthian or composite capitals, those are Roman or Renaissance. And the Renaissance is, in some cases, a replica, an attempt at duplicating Rome. That's mosaic. This is from Pompeii. What makes this chair Baroque? Look at that crazy scrolling carved wood. That kind of wave. Seems like it's moving. That's very Baroque. That really, that red upholstery can also be said to be it's like a fashionable, excuse me, Baroque color. But really, the main thing is that scroll work. That is the dramatic and expressive ornament. All right, the type of leaf used in the detail of the Corinthian order is acanthus. Arch, vault, and dome are prominent features of Roman architecture. The Egyptians and Greeks used similar furniture types. Yes, they did. Beds, chairs, stools, couches, all very like the Greeks got it from the Egyptians. And the significance of the discovery of the ancient city of Pompeii is it allows us to see what Roman domestic architecture looked like. I know I've said this before, but it's unusual that we can see such an excellent example of domestic architecture from a city so long ago. Pompeii is still being excavated. It's like a very slow process. It's taken more than 200 years, and the process is slow, and they're very careful not to damage anything if they can avoid it. And so there's still more there's still more of Pompeii that's buried. That someday it'll all be done. I'd be interested to see what it looked like. I don't know if I'll still be. I might not be alive when they finish. All right, features of Italian Baroque. So it's dramatic, emphasizes movement, promotes the power and authority of the Roman Catholic Church. It does not promote the Protestant Reformation. It is in opposition to the Protestant Reformation. That is pediment, that triangular section of the facade above the columns. That is the pediment. Still used. This is a fauteuil. It is the armchair that is open underneath the arms. What makes the soup terrain so rococo? It's organic, asymmetrical. Seems to be moving. It has these like leaf, shell, rock type of ornament. It's made of solid silver. Which is, if the use of like something that is like pure silver, it's also Baroque. That goes before Rococo, so that one's not as that's not as strong of an answer. But it's the appearance of it, the ornament, the asymmetry. All right, and here you go. Rococo is known for being asymmetrical, exuberant, and playful. That's true. Ormolu is the gold-colored metallic ornamental mount used on furniture that is bronze fired in a kiln with vaporized mercury to produce the golden surface. It's very harmful. A bergère is an upholstered armchair with closed arms. It also is like it's like a larger chair. So a few of you did answer that it's like a very deep-seated upholstered armchair. I would accepted that also. Chinoiserie, French or other European interpretation of Chinese or other Asian types in decorative arts, begins to appear in the Baroque era in France. So it's this it's very generic often, and clearly this it's more like to be exotic and fashionable. It's not an exact reproduction. What significance did mirrors play in French interiors in the 17th and 18th centuries? They improved the lighting. They made spaces look bigger. They are a demonstration of wealth because mirrors were expensive, especially the way someone like Louis XIV used them, where there were a lot of them. All right, royal patronage, the creation of workshops such as the Louvre, Gobelin, and Savonnerie accelerated improvements in the quality of furniture, textiles, and other interior furnishings in France in the Baroque era. That's true. Thank you, Louis, for pushing the quality. All right, so this one. How is this low stool, a pliant, used at the court of Louis XIV? This was the tiny little low stool you would sit on if you were given permission to sit in the presence of the monarch. Most people stood. In some cases, a member of the nobility might be granted permission to sit once in a lifetime in the presence of the monarch. and there were sometimes people that were given permission to sit, but if you sat at the court of Louis XIV, you sat on this. It is low, is not meant to be tremendously comfortable. It placed you very low to the floor, so that when the monarch was either anyone standing or Louis XIV up on his dais, you would be. It was really a clear hierarchy of height. So, rock shells and grottos are characteristics of which decorative style? That's Rococo. According to the Abrams Guide, Queen Anne's style is in part a restrained and English version of French Rococo. That's true. And according to the Abrams Guide, seafoam is a color associated with Rococo or Louis XV style. That's true. According to Abrams Guide, Baroque room is circular, asymmetrical, with a low ceiling. That's false. It's symmetrical and high ceiling. In Baroque and Rococo furniture, what is the difference between a console and a credenza? A console is a table attached to the wall, or placed up against the wall intentionally. But most of them were made with two legs mounted to the wall, and they would have a mirror, usually a mirror placed on the wall directly above the tabletop, so that it was more of like a setting. And a credenza is a Italian sideboard, or kind of like a buffet, a lower, more like a something with like a cabinet like four legs. And Boule Marqueterie is named for André Charles Boule, not Louis XIV. Boule was one of those early people to have a, I guess, a decorative technique named after him. There. All right. So I'll finish the last two before I finish when I'm done with the class here tonight. So, all right. Now, nope. All right. So, iron tech. All right. So the structure in architecture that affects interiors is, in the 19th century, cast iron is being used, and then eventually steel. Steel, iron and steel have been around for centuries, but steel, like when the Bessemer process was invented, steel could finally be produced in large enough quantities and strong enough that it could be used as a structural material. But as that was getting worked out, or before that was getting worked out, we have cast iron. And so cast iron makes for a good building material, although it has a lower melting temperature than steel does, and so in a fire, cast iron is more prone to failing. In the Chicago fire, there are a lot of buildings that were made with had like cast iron structure, but the fire got so hot that the structure started to soften and then collapse. So this, the Crystal Palace in London, built in London, um, it was moved to a different location. Um, but it was built in 1851 for the Great Exhibition, which was the first World Expo, and destroyed by fire in 1936. Here is the old grainy photo. A wood engraving of a prefabricated section being lifted into place. So you can see how these arches, I guess really like this vaulted roof, so built in prefabricated sections and then lifted into place and fastened and then glazed. Horses did a lot of work in those days. And here is a fine art, an art print of the Crystal Palace interior. And so these expos were, I went to the World's Fair when I was in high school in 1980, I think it was 1982 in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I gotta say, as a teenager, it was boring. It was all about energy, and different countries had different pavilions, and they're all presenting like this is what's great about this our nation. But the best ones, China and Japan, apparently had the best ones, but the lines, it was hours to get into the Japanese and Chinese pavilions because they actually brought cool stuff. Like they brought some like excellent pottery, or they probably like rebuilt like a Japanese house inside their pavilion because why wouldn't they? They do it well. And so I remember going to like the Australian pavilion, and it was just all about like energy production. I was like, oh my god, I felt sad for the people there because like nobody wanted to go to that. Like nobody wanted to go to half of these things, and but so it's this kind of got its start here. Um, though the reason I went to the Knoxville World's Fair is because it was all a big misunderstanding. I was looking at some story about Vancouver in a magazine, and it happened to be like the World's Fair had been in Vancouver, and it was about the World's Fair in Vancouver, and I was like, oh my god, look at this place, this is so cool. So I showed it to my mom and my stepdad. I said, I want to go here, and they're like, okay. And then my mom surprised me like the next spring. She's like, guess what? We're going to the World's Fair. I'm like, why? Like, didn't you want to go? Like, oh no, I wanted to go to Vancouver. And they're like, oh, we're not going there. Going to Knoxville. Eh, they tried. They did try. But so these expos were extremely popular. It was a way to showcase um, cultural things. So here, Pujin, remember him from last week with all of his Gothic revival stuff, created a medieval room. And some of this is like this is Gothic revival stuff. This is all like new. This is like a lot of like there might be some artifacts, but a lot of this stuff is like new, like things that you can get. It's kind of like a big trade show. Here, this German cast iron table. I think you saw this last time. I saw this photo of Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin sitting and talking at a table in some very elaborate interior. And this table, in like a more like shiny metallic form, was sitting in between them. Okay, so here the Bibliothèque Saint-Genève in Paris. looks kind of ordinary, or I guess sort of like low level. Bow's like neoclassical, I guess. So this is a little early for Beaux-Arts style architecture, but has classical Roman elements. But look at that beautiful modern cast iron um, arches and vaults. There are some great libraries in Paris like this. So this is really interesting because this is like, you could say it's kind of Gothic-y in a way, but this is original. I can't think of like, I mean, it has like an element of that of the rinceau pattern that goes like curve this way, curve this way, curve this way, curve this way. Um, and it has some like classical. Those are like some composite capitals down here, but those are cast iron. So it has elements of classical architecture, new decorative motifs, and it's made of new material. There, Bibliothèque Nationale. Beautiful. And you can see where like the cast iron is very strong. Look how thin those columns are. There's not much to it. So the idea, so here there are these fan vaults from Salisbury Cathedral. This is the upper floors, which are more industrial, kind of like a prison, but I don't think it was meant. This is like using the new material um, of cast iron is sort of comes with this like enthusiasm where they just like they make everything out of it. Paris Opera. This is Beaux-Arts style. I don't that shouldn't have been in there. Um, okay, so this is the Central Hall in Paris, destroyed in 1964. So this is like a market, like big central market, and this a lot of European cities, a lot of cities like around the world have them. Um, there's one Eastern Market in Detroit is like this. It's not as big, but Eastern Market is still there. It's largely open air. Um, you know, it's kind of covered roof and but these like it's largely open on the sides. So and I've been to the Central Market in Athens, and it's um, you know be prepared for the blood if you go to one of those places because they bring you know um, it's like seafood, slaughtered pigs, heads hanging up. Then they have other places where there are vegetables and flowers, which is nice. But so, so this is like so this is like engineering and like figuring out large spans with this new material. And Viollet-le-Duc, he did the spire, a 19th century addition onto Notre Dame that collapsed and was destroyed last year when the roof of Notre Dame caught on fire. So that is this Gothic replica, or sort of like replica spire, built in the 19th century. And it was right in the middle of the nave. So here, from Discourses on Architecture, so he is involved with one of the people, along with Gustav Eiffel, figuring out how to use cast iron and steel to build. This is mostly, I mean, it's mostly cast iron. Yeah, stonework and cast iron. So the idea of having something that's lighter and stronger is beneficial because you can open up the space, similar to the way like the Romans figuring out using like the arch and the vault and to create much larger interior spaces. So this is something that's just continues to be part of the work of architects and engineers. So here are some architectural details. And this, do you see they're little, these are people down here, those little specks. This is a very large span. And there are the columns coming down, that sort of tapered footing on the column. So it's big. And this is for the Paris Exposition in 1889, 4 years before the Columbian Exposition in Chicago. And this is the Paris Exposition is the one that the Columbian Exposition in Chicago was comparing itself to. That's why in Chicago they built the gigantic Ferris wheel, because this guy built the Eiffel Tower. And the Eiffel Tower was this like demonstration, like look what we can do. It was really like, Eiffel Tower was only meant to be this it's like a model. It's kind of like an architectural, like a sort of like a test model to show what they can do with cast iron. And then in Chicago, like, well, we got to make something bigger and better. So they were like, how about a Ferris wheel that's that's bigger than the Eiffel Tower? Like, yeah. And they did. The one that's at Navy Pier right now is smaller than the one that they built in 1893. The cars like that you went up on, and the Ferris wheel at the Columbian Exposition were about the size of like a railway car. It was enormous, and they're like, I hope it works, because they got an engineer, like they were like we got to do this, and they like looked around, and finally they found an engineer in Pittsburgh who said like, oh yeah, I think I can do that. They're like, okay, come to Chicago and do it. It was like this grand, like there were a lot of ideas that they'd never tried before, and they were just like, well, we think we can do it, so let's just say we're going to do it. And almost all of it they pulled off. Impressive. If you haven't read the book Devil in the White City, I recommend it. It's a combination. It's about the process of Daniel Burnham, mostly Daniel Burnham. At the beginning, John Root was with him, but John Root died from pneumonia like 2 years into the process. Daniel Burnham pulling off the World's Fair against all odds, when like it was still like swampy, floody land, like a year before they were supposed to open the fair. It was still like it's like, what do you mean you haven't finished dredging it? Like, we're just like, we should have this thing already started by now. And we're like, oh yeah. There's also a serial killer story, because there was a serial killer active at the Columbian Exposition, and eventually he got like he got away, but eventually they'll tell you about it in the book. But he took advantage of the fact that there was a lot going on and nobody was really paying attention, and he just like kind of like built this like rooming house, which also doubled um, as his murder house.
H. Holmes.
Yep, H. Holmes. So yeah, so Devil in the White City it's a good book.
Creepy.
It's creepy, yeah. Well, Holmes is really creepy. It's combination. It's a history of the World's Fair of the Columbian Exposition, um, and it's also like this sort of like sort of like an account of what H. Holmes was doing. So anyway, so here Gustav Eiffel like these large span railway bridges. This is like worthy of the Romans. And there it is, the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, and at first, as with so many things, at first people thought it was hideous and they hated it. Now it's, Paris can't do without it. There it is, a photograph during the World's Fair or the Paris Exposition. And yeah, with people using coal for power, things were really smoky and sooty. So this was, it's yeah, this was a little bit before the modern Olympics get started again, but it was similar in a way to the Olympics, where it was a big deal if your city was chosen to host the latest exposition, the sort of world exposition, and then they would change, call it like Paris Exposition, Columbian Exposition, depending on where it's being held. So here are some modern photos, so you get some sense of the scale of it. And there's a lot of structure there. There's an original drawing of one of the cars that goes up it, two level car that goes up the tower. So here's the Columbian Exposition Ferris wheel. And this was on the south, like down like near the University of Chicago, where the Museum of Science and Industry is too. Oh, that was, I was hoping I thought I had more here. All right. So the iron, so you said, cast iron and then later steel. There's a Bessemer process that was discovered for steel that made it possible to make large quantities of steel so that it could be used for structure. And steel is preferable to cast iron because it's stronger. So now you see here a little bit about this. You see the architectural style here. All these buildings are temporary. Um, some of the rail, like the elevated rail, was built meant to be temporary and ended up staying up for a very long time. Um, the like the style of the architecture originally. So there are two prominent Chicago architects at this time, Daniel Burnham and John Root. And you may have heard. Have any of you heard about either of these guys? Anybody heard of the Burnham Plan? Okay, so the reason Chicago did not develop the lakefront is because of Daniel Burnham. That's the reason he insisted that Chicago build parkland and that they not develop right up to the water, so that the people so that the citizens of people who lived in Chicago could use the lake and just enjoy the lakefront. Um, he also like a lot of he and a lot of the other business leaders, like I think Montgomery Ward was one of the business leaders in Chicago, and he agreed with Burnham's plan because he had an office on Michigan Avenue, and he didn't want somebody building in front of his building and obscuring his view of the lake. So some of it was a little self-serving, but not that much. So Burnham and Root wanted the Columbian Exposition in Chicago to reflect the new architecture being made in Chicago. And that would be like, the more like modern and like architecture that owed less to the European architecture. On the East Coast, it was all like still like very neoclassical, and like there's the Beaux-Arts style of architecture that is like like sort of like the last big neoclassical um, phase, I guess you could say. And um, Burnham and Root wanted to have the more original Chicago style of architecture be prominent at the Columbian Exposition. But John Root died before they could finish, and John Root was the one who was in charge of the design of the fair. And so Burnham had no choice but to ask for architects he knew from the East Coast to come and help. And they brought all of this, so it looks more like it looks more traditional than they wanted it to be. All right, so where is my, I'm going to stop here. Yeah, come here. Here we go. So this was in Chicago, all temporary, except for the Museum of Science and Industry, which was the Palace of Fine Arts. Most of the buildings were meant to be just like, they were made of like wood, just like they were made of cheap wood, and they were painted white because they needed, it was kind of like a last minute decision that I think it was because I honestly, I think it's because it looked really terrible, and they're like, just paint it all white and bring it together, and so it ended up working and being called the White City. That's why the book is called Devil in the White City. And yeah, so some photos of this. There's some nice. So like this, they built this lagoon. And I've often a lot of people look at this and think, "Dang, I wish that was still there." But it was never meant to be permanent. I think to build that would have cost It would cost a lot of money to build that. But it is a lot more traditional in its appearance than they ever meant for it to be. But Burnham didn't have any choice. Okay. Here's the other end of it. So it's nice to think about, like, this happened in Chicago over 100 years ago, and it was originally meant to be like a celebration of Chicago, because honestly the people that were the other like a lot of the East Coast architects, when they found out Chicago was going to get it, they just like couldn't believe it, because Chicago was nothing. It was certainly not New York, and they just thought, well, yeah, that they're going to fail. So it was a triumph that it ever came off in the first place. All right. So right along, yeah, I want to talk about these guys. Art Nouveau. So last week we talked about a lot of the 19th century stuff, and the Art Nouveau is something that starts in the 19th century, and it kind of like runs, parallel with the late Victorian era, and it's really an interesting original style. It is considered, your author, Mr. Smith, refers to it as a revolt against the all like the historicism of the Victorian age, where there are all of these like revival style after revival style, and so Art Nouveau seeks to create something original, modern. It was really considered to be the first modern style, and there's a certain element. It's a very playful style. There is an element of fantasy in some respects. So this whiplash, this what's called a whiplash curve, is something that's like a feature of Art Nouveau style. Very organic, and I think in some respects it does have a relationship with Rococo. There is graphic design, like book design, and like fine art printmaking. This is a woodcut. And so you see this like really organic things seem to be, so I guess in respect, it a lot of movement, very, I guess, well, you'll see. So here, Hotel Tassel in Brussels. So Victor Horta is Belgian, and he is one of the prominent architects and designers working in this style. So you can see they're using the modern material of cast iron. The interior painting is beautiful, the tile work, this mosaic on the floor. But it really is very, I think the decorative ornament is elaborate, I guess you could say. How does this look to you? Does anybody think this looks cool?
It looks like a music stand.
I think it's stunning.
I have to say, this is one of those, like, this is a style of architecture that does a lot for me. So art glass, that like, yeah. So you'll see this when we look at Frank Lloyd Wright. You'll see Frank Lloyd Wright does this idea of returning to something like stained glass, which is in this era is called art glass. Um, it's the same idea of like having different colored glass panels and this leading that um, allows you. Basically, it's like a contour line around a drawing. I'll check. I'll look up the difference, um, or one of you while I'm doing this, you can look up the difference between stained glass and art glass. I believe it is like in terms of how the glass is made, but art glass, stained glass, that's beautiful. So this is the house that Victor Horta designed for himself. Mirror, skylight, but like what he does with all of this, like really, and it's like what he does with these flourishes of the cast iron, I think is beautiful.
So I looked up like stained glass versus art glass,
Mm-hmm.
and it's saying that art glass is always decorative and sometimes handcrafted. Stained glass is among the most popular forms of art glass, sometimes referred to as leaded glass.
Okay, so effectively, there's no
No
clear
difference.
difference.
Yeah, no difference.
Okay, well, it's not the first time people have come up with a new word for the same thing just to sound different, or maybe that is just what people called it um, as a sort of like a genre of decorative arts.
I have a question. Is Gaudi, all the Gaudi buildings you see in Barcelona, is that part of this
Yes,
movement?
yes, he's coming up.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Antoni Gaudi in Spain is the same era, and he is like kind of his own. He kind of like was very well. He's kind of pretty clearly within this style, but very original, even within this style. So this, yeah. So the way the wood. I mean, even like the way the wood is carved on the banister. That's so you. So yes, you are meant to look at this and understand this is organic, or it appears to be organic. It's manufactured, and this is also it's a modern style. So arts and crafts is opposed to the industrialization. They don't completely at this point, like even like the arts and crafts people, they would use some elements, like some aspects of um, industrialization. Like they would sometimes have some of their textiles made on a jacquard loom, which is a mechanism that is not the same thing as having a team of weavers weave a tapestry. Um, the as you get farther and farther, I guess like more, I guess after arts and crafts, the Art Nouveau designers, they're okay with industrial production because of what it can do. I mean, it's like wrought iron and cast iron. Wrought iron requires like somebody to like actually form like heat the iron and bend it. Cast iron can be cast and um, made faster and in higher quantities, so it works better for as an industrial product. Right, some nice ceramic tile on the ceiling, and the furniture. I really love the furniture. Um, this spectacular kitchen, I guess, is a dining room. Some really nice detail. All right, innovation department store. This is kind of a similar to like the I think it's where Macy's is now. It was the Marshall Fields with the big atrium in the center, like in the middle, and then the balconies all around.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the way. I mean, these big department stores were a thing in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, and so the like using cast iron and steel allowed them to open up these big spans in the middle, and then you have this. Basically, you go and you can see all of it, all the shopping you can do. Look at that. All right, Art Nouveau in France. So Hector Guimard. So French and Belgian Art Nouveau is very similar. And so you see this entrance gate. I mean, come on. Look at that. Isn't that cool? You want that for your place? It wouldn't even go with my, building, but I'd take it. It'd be great if all of our doors looked like that. And here's the interior, nice and bright. A lot of light, like these light surfaces, and this rocky, sort of combined with this rocky looking surface. Yeah. Pastels. So you see in the French, you see more, I guess in this case, there's like these pastel colors. Mauve, which is this sort of like, grayish violet color, was very fashionable, especially in um, clothing fashion. So some wallpaper. Isn't this, don't you love this crazy design? I mean, this is like, are they like cartoony feet, legs, like frog legs, or I don't know what. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something. It's as abstract. But it's definitely has an organic appearance to it. So that's sometimes I think successful and flexible abstraction gives you some idea of what it could be, but it doesn't tell you what it is. Because then you're not stuck with it. Now you're not stuck with just like one meaning. A lot of people can interpret it in a lot of different ways. So here's a comparison with William Morris, very symmetrical, and then the crazy Art Nouveau. So it's kind of like a comparison between Baroque and Rococo. And furniture. So there's this, with the Rococo, there's a certain irrational quality to it. It's not always practical. It's more artistic and interesting on purpose. You know, a lot of this, like you see, like with this sideboard, you can identify all kinds of elements in it that just don't need to be there to be, you know, to function as this piece of furniture. But I love that what looks like a branch growing across and then down the side. And you know, like the drawer pulls are also designed to go with this like growing branch with this, you know, it's almost like in some cases I think it looks a little bit like it has those Gothic crockets on it. Hey. Okay. Asymmetrical sofa bench. Does it look like it's house, like a house out of a fairy tale?
Yes, it looks very Rapunzel.
Yes. So, and this is like when, like, you know, I think when some I think when some of these popular stories were being written, this was the sort of like fun fantasy architecture of the day.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah. Bent, growing, everything. It looks like it's alive.
Yeah, and from that picture, it looks like somebody took a Sharpie. It is like just like drawing all over things, just from that photo.
Yeah. There's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
When you think about someone designing all of this, there's a lot there. All right, so Guimard also designed a lot of the metro stations in Paris for the new subway. And if you've ever been to Paris and seen these are pretty cool. And you can see there's like the typography, you know, it has sort of like a typographical style. So it's not just in the architectural structure, it is in graphics and typography. So signage. So here's some detail on one of the metro entrances. That's in one of those panels right up there. And these, I love these, like the lamppost with the sign. It's like it's out of some foreboding folktale. Like these eyes looking at you.
It almost looks something very like spooky, scary.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I don't know that they meant to make it scary. They meant to make it look like it was alive. And that it's clearly it looks like it is like they're looking at plants when they're designing, like when they're like for clues. And it's something that a lot of, you know, for a lot of in a lot of like architecture and design and art excuse me, they I mean they will always, like, you know, a lot of them write about looking to nature for inspiration. That if you can't think of anything, look to nature because so much beauty is there. And you know, you can't duplicate the sophistication of a tree.
I was gonna say, it looks like a tree. Like like you would look at trees and take it from trees, or mushrooms.
Yep. Or like a stalk of the stalk of a plant. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. More cool furniture.
I love that piece.
Isn't it nice?
That is gorgeous.
Yeah. And here's some seating. There's a chair and a table. Yeah. And it does have this, like that chair, like the back of the chair, there's the splat in the middle and then there's little bits on the side. Look like they're holding up the backrest. So there's a certain like animated quality to them, as if they do have some kind of life to them. And another armoire with sculpture and marquetry.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. If you can imagine, it would cost a little bit of money to get something like this made today. Partly because, well, if you find someone who can make it, that person is a specialist. So this is and here Louis Majorelle dressing table from it's Nancy is a city. This I love the this element that bends forward, bends across the front of it, um, which doesn't really do much in terms of how you use it. It looks like it would be more of an obstacle, but it creates these two little spaces on the right and the left of the mirror. So and really this is like it's meant to be interesting and sculptural. It's really meant to be more a piece of art as much as it is a piece of furniture. That's, I think, a strong feature of this style. Okay. Hey, so if we missed this, oh, we did. We missed this. So hold on. Go right over that. That's cool. Yeah, there and there. Okay, and that was it. All right. Oh, and I did bring up this. Somehow I just skipped right over those two. So you can remember the simplicity of this tonneau chair, and then I mean, these are relatively simple compared to some of that stuff, but um, still not simple. Okay, so that's France and French and Belgian Art Nouveau. And look out, because here comes Antoni Gaudí, the Spanish madman. All right, so in Spain there was such a thing as Moorish revival, which was a Spanish revival style, and Moorish refers to North African and Islamic design. Um, the Spain was um, it was invaded by a Muslim army back in like the 8th century, and um, that was a big. A lot of Spain was Muslim for about 700 years, and so, and it was from what I've read, it was largely very like peaceful, um, and really like Spain was in great shape then. There was a lot of there was religious tolerance, from Christians, Muslims, and Jews um, mostly lived alongside each other harmoniously, and so even Christian churches got Islamic influence on them, and so this is just part. This is just part of Spanish culture. So here, yeah. So this is a building by Gaudí in the 1880s. That's so like this doesn't look like the rest of the European stuff. Here, the Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba, built in the 10th century. So this alternating light-dark stone, that is a feature of Romanesque, but it's also a patterning in Islamic design. Okay, Casa Batlló, Barcelona, 1905. You can already tell, even with the trees sitting there, you're going to see something cool. So this, Gaudí went way farther than anybody else in just making this look like the whole building has this sculptural quality to it. I mean, it looks like it was just sort of poured in a very viscous liquid form and just kind of ran down the side and then dried. But you can see you can see the sections, like the seams between in the stone. Some roof detail. He really seemed to enjoy with these the vented, sort of like the little venting chimneys. He did something with them. There's a lot of this mosaic with fairly big tile, like fairly big pieces, like glass and tile. Um, Here's the interior stairwell of this building. There's a photo from 1905 of one of the interiors. Love that ceiling. This is like, can you imagine going to look at like an apartment or a condo and seeing this? I'm like, oh, that'd be pretty slick. So it's nice to see some of photos of some of these places when with the furniture that they had when it was new. So you get an idea of we can get an idea of what it looked like more than 100 years ago. But this is really creative and really unique, I think, in terms of design. I love it that Gaudí did all this stuff.
Are those benches in that little nook?
Yes, there's a fireplace in there, like way
Okay.
down in here. And there is seating.
That's cool. And it looks very animalistic.
Yeah. So that in like a modernist architecture, like after World War II, there's a style of architect. There's a, a style of modernism that's called brutalist, which is like really just like heavy, concrete, looks menacing. And Gaudi has a more playful version of that going on. It
Okay.
looks like it's like you're in a cave sometimes, um, or like the surfaces are very like almost like natural stone surfaces, even though they're all built to look that way. Yeah, I mean it's really as if like you took a sculptor that didn't know anything about architecture and just said, "Here, design a building." Like, okay, and they would do this. I can think of someone who was a sculpture student from a different school I taught at a long time ago, and I can imagine Russell designing something like this that would just be like big and burly and rough looking, but also really beautiful. Furniture, an oak side chair. More furniture, Casamila. So you can see this is all like made of stone. Like this cladding is all stone, and the balconies are stone. And the iron railing, which looks like it's like it's growing. It looks like it's like leafy. You see this like looks like it's plants. Here's a plan. This is the first floor plan of this building. Even like if you looking at this in plan, it's like like to hell with the rectangle. It's just I thought it would look better this way. I mean, like nowadays, good luck finding. I mean, like it would cost a lot of money to. I mean, if you can, like, it would take a while to find like a contractor that would be even willing to try building something like this. It takes so much specialized, you just like building out all of those like the apartments with nothing at a right angle. I love it. And then look at this. It's like you're inside a tree. I think he is one of the greatest architects. I mean, I think it's such good stuff. Not for, I mean,
Although maybe it'd be nice for an architect as somebody that just says no right angles. Fantastic.
yeah, 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 yeah. It looks like it should be like raining in there or something.
Yeah, it looks like a tree house.
Yeah, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's very beautiful.
All right, here's an aerial view of the roof. And this is up on the roof. This is some of the sculptural work on his, like the ventilation chimneys with these like helmet-like covers on them. And this is designed as like supposed to be like a community. So he's kind of an idealist that the roof was a space for the residents of the buildings to just go and use. So you see the roof is meant, there are stairs, big, stairs going around it. You're meant to go up there. The roofscape. You can see in the background the Sagrada Familia still under construction, which is one of his last projects that wasn't finished in his lifetime and still isn't finished. They're still doing it. It's just taking a long time. Here, so here, this is a cake. Like that. That's a gingerbread house, and that's a house that Gaudi, the Gatekeeper's Lodge, that Gaudi designed. Pretty cool. And this is in a park. This is, yeah. You know, it's the kind of thing where it's like, now, like you look at it, like somebody, like would somebody build this today publicly? Maybe not in the U.S. Some parts of the world are building like really crazy stuff. That is impressive. I think this, but yeah, again, it's like you're, you know, making things look like they were somehow associated with the Earth was very important. I think to Gaudi. Yeah, you see these this is elevated. You can see there's a lower level down there. And I love how this like roughly cut, it looks like a roughly cut stone column that's probably cast concrete. You know, it kind of doesn't look like it should be able to hold that up. And some of his stuff, some of his like some of the columns and some of his architecture looks intentionally fragile or unstable when it is anything but. And Church of the Sacred Family. So here, so this is a Romanesque, Gothic, and Baroque church in Spain. Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela. So you can see there's a lot of ornament on this church. And I show you this because, you know, well, he kind of maybe he got it from somewhere. But this is like really, you know, like it's like every time he did something, it was more over the top than the previous project. And here's a detail of the facade. I love that iguana hanging out up there. East Towers. And this is in Los Angeles, Watchtowers, which is a piece of outsider art. This is a guy who slowly built this over the course of better than 30 years, just with found metal pieces. And he was a mail carrier. He collected metal pieces and brought them home. But not, you know, there is a certain unrefined quality to Gaudi's architecture that is intentional. Yep. So yeah, so this, every time I check, like if you check the internet for this Sagrada Familia, you'll find that like there's a new date when they expect to be finished. I think, it's like 2022, 2026. It's always coming up soon that they're going to be finished with this church. But like this, I think the construction, when he died, construction stopped, and it's been picked up off and on by different people. But there are, like, I think there's a foundation now that is determined to finish this church. Okay, let's take a little break here. Stay signed in. I'll take attendance, and we'll do a little bit more after the break. Stop sharing screen.